Welcome to Advanced Care Planning with our special guest, Julie Griffin of Spectrum Health Lakeland. My name is Amy Nichols. I am the campus coordinator at the Campus for Creative Aging. And this is a special partnership we do with our friends at Spectrum Health Lakeland. And we're super excited to have her here. And we wanted to let you know that you can visit their website too if you have any questions after this is done, or you can email us, or you can visit our website at the campusforcreativeaging.org. All of the rest of our classes are online there too. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Julie Griffin to teach our class today. So welcome, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. And thanks all of you for being here. I know you don't have to leave your cameras on, but it is so much nicer when I'm not talking at people. So please feel free to jump in at any point with questions or comments or experiences that you've had. Please absolutely feel free to interrupt at any time, okay?
And I should mention, I forgot to mention, feel free to use the chat box if you want to type a question out that you need answered. I will happily kind of jump in when Julie takes a breath and ask her questions. So feel free to use that.
Thank you. Okay, good. So first of all, thank you for considering advanced care planning. This really is a gift for the people that love you. When you've shared your wishes with them, it gives them the tools that they need to be your voice at a really difficult time. It saves them doubt, guilt, worry, conflict, and it ensures that you get the care that's right for you. So thank you for taking the time to plan ahead of a crisis. I wish that more people would do this. So please feel free to share with your friends as well. I know Amy's recording this. This is something that really everybody 18 and up should be doing. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here. So what is advanced care planning? Advanced care planning is, like I said, for all adults 18 and up. I wish, honestly, it was for 16 and up when people start driving. You know, anything can happen to any of us at any time. Of course, we hope that it won't and that we'll never need these documents. But like I said, this is really a gift for families when they know how to care for each other. So it's thinking about future healthcare decisions if you had a sudden event like an accident or an illness. Who do you trust to make decisions for you if you can't speak for yourself? Do those people know what you would want? So not just do you have a document in place, but do your loved ones know what that document says and what your wishes are? So making sure that it's written down and then making sure that it's available when people need it. So what we're not going to do is fill out a document and then tuck it away in a safety deposit box with our safest papers where no one can ever find it. So we want to make sure that it's available to emergency services, to our family, to anyone who might need that document. Absolutely, the most important part of this process is the conversation that you have with your family so that they can hear directly from you what your wishes are and be prepared for this type of situation. Oh, we've got a poll here, Amy.
All right, I am the queen of the polls. So what's going to happen is I'm going to share a poll and it's going to pop up on your screen, I think. And you are going to, if it doesn't work, we may have to stop sharing for just a second.
Oh,
but,
okay, sure.
Let's try it first because you're going to get to answer the question, click on the answer, and then hit submit. So here we go. Here is our very first one. Let's see. Can you guys see it on your screens? Yes. Denise, can you see it? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, you can. Okay, awesome. Great. So the first one is, have you completed your advance directive? Yes or no? And once you hit your answer, then all right, 3 out of 5 have voted. You guys are quick. Thank you. All right. So here we go. Here's the results. I'm going to say that 2 of you are on it. Yes, you have. This will be a good refresher for you. But there's also some new things I'm sure Julie's going to talk to you about. But there's also, and the 3 of you that have not are in the really right place. So I did share with them, Julie, the autofill document as well. So they have it, they all have it ahead of time.
Oh, good. Okay, perfect.
All right.
So some of you have it done. That's great. Thank you for being honest as well, the people that don't have it done. I know people tend to, to not want to answer that question. But there's nothing wrong with that. You are not alone. I cannot tell you how many people I have met who have, you know, I'll walk into their house and they'll have a 3-4 inch pile of advance directives documents that they've collected with great intentions and just never gotten around to filling out. So that's an okay place to be. Do I just close this out, Amy? Let's try that. Okay, so we're gonna follow a process here to work on your advanced care plan. We don't recommend completing a document without some reflection and discussion first. We're gonna go over a series of questions and information points that'll help you put a robust plan together. We find that as people consider these questions, it sometimes alters, oop, did you hear that thunder? It sometimes alters what people would have written down. Whereas if they just, fill out a document immediately, they might end up completely changing it by the time they get done thinking it through. So the first thing we're going to do is reflect. Ask yourself what matters to you most and discuss that with your family. The importance of having everybody on the same page about your wishes, even if they don't agree with those choices, cannot be overemphasized. This step is what helps people prevent conflict in an emotional situation like an accident or an illness. Nobody wants to argue at a time like this, but people, they have different ideas about what's right for you. And that's where the conflict comes from, not from people being mean to each other or anything like that. It's that people have different ideas about what's right. And, it's a very emotional topic. So that's why it's so important that everybody hear directly from you about what your wishes are. And this is what keeps families together in hard times, and it prevents conflict that can impact relationships permanently. So I've heard this described as the difference between families going home in one car or three, which we've all seen that, unfortunately. So we're going to first reflect and then talk with our family. Then the next step, that's when we're going to think about who you would want to speak for you. There's two different kinds of power of attorney, and that confuses people sometimes. So there's a healthcare power of attorney and financial. They can be the same person, but it's two different forms, or sometimes it's one that's combined. If you get it done at a law office, a lot of times they'll just combine it all into one document. So often people think they have this in place because they've done a will, but they've only done the financial part. So if you've already got a document done, and I know a couple of you said that you already have, and you're just reviewing it, or you're maybe doing this along with your family, make sure you look at that document and that it expressly gives that person permission to make medical decisions for you. If it doesn't, you're going to need to complete this healthcare power of attorney. And that's included in the document that Amy sent out to everybody here. So step 3 is storage. Like I said, what we're not going to do is fill this out and put it in a safety deposit box. Your advocates, your family, your doctor, your local hospital, emergency services, all of these people need to be able to access a copy of this quickly. And so we'll talk about some good places to keep it later. Step 4 is review. So the decisions that you make today might be very different from the decisions that you'd make 10 or 20 years from now. This is a living document. It can and it should change with you throughout your life as your circumstances change, as your health changes. So we'll talk about some times and events in your life when it'll be important to review your document and make sure that it still matches your wishes. So we're going to start our plan with some reflection, and we're going to talk about who you should consider as an advocate. Advocates are the people that you appoint who can make medical decisions for you. And that terminology varies state by state. In some they use agent, in others they call it power of attorney or POA. The term we use most commonly in Michigan is advocate. So that's how I'm going to refer to it here. Some things to know about advocates. They don't have to be family. They don't have to live close. As long as they're reachable by phone, they can speak for you. 1 is essential. You can have as many as you want, but 3 is a really good number. That way there's somebody that we can reach if your first choice isn't available. That's happened before. We've had families where their their power of attorney just happened to be on a cruise in the middle of the Caribbean and we couldn't reach them, you know. So having a backup is important. And then because the person that you choose as your primary advocate is likely somebody that you're close to, somebody that you spend a lot of time with, like a spouse or a sister or a good friend, it's important to prepare for a scenario where something might happen to you together. So if you were both in an accident, who would speak for you then? So having that backup is really important. If you don't have somebody that you can name as a backup, or even as an advocate, sometimes that happens, then it's even more important to complete this document and distribute it widely so that your document can speak for you in that situation. So choosing an advocate is not about who thinks they should have the role, who's going to be good at it. So this can be a touchy thing to work through as a family. Maybe the oldest child thinks they should have it because it should go by birth order, or maybe the spouse thinks they should have it because that's just what seems right. So make clear in your conversation that this is not about who loves who more. This is about who is going to be best at this role. It's an important role, it's a high pressure role, and there are certain qualities that you should look for when you're naming advocates. And just a reminder to make sure that you're including your advocates in this conversation, as well as anybody who'd be very involved if you were to become ill or injured. It's so important that they hear from you what your wishes are to save that conflict down the road. Qualities to look for in an advocate. So they have to be willing to accept the role. In Michigan, advocates have to sign what's called an advocate acceptance form. When they sign that, they're saying, yes, I'm aware that you've named me as an advocate and I'm willing to do this for you. And that is, you know, to prevent people from walking into the emergency room and then finding out that they're an advocate, you know, and not having any information to go on. Side note, I once walked into a wedding and then found out that I was the maid of honor and had to give a speech. So that was super alarming and nowhere near as consequential as this. So super important to make sure that you talk to your loved ones about what you would want. So another quality to look for in an advocate is they have to be willing to talk with you about your health, your goals, and your preferences. This is going to be an ongoing conversation throughout your life. A good advocate is somebody who's very comfortable talking about potential outcomes, possibilities, and what ifs. Some people are deeply uncomfortable talking about bad things that might happen. They're worried about you and your health, so much so that it's difficult to have a productive conversation about this topic. And so while those people have their place in our lives and we're grateful for them and we love them, this just might not be the role for them. They must be willing to follow your decisions, even if they don't agree with them. The legal part of this document is where you name the people that you trust to speak for you. All the rest of it is guidance for these people, and they can override it. That surprises people sometimes. They need that flexibility in order to adjust the plan as needed, but they should be willing to follow your plan as closely as possible, even if they don't agree with your choices. And I would ask them directly if they can do this. It's very easy from a distance to say, oh, sure, I could do that for you. I love you. Of course, I want you to have what you want. But thinking more deeply about what that might feel like is really a worthwhile exercise. Sometimes people do surprise each other. I have seen this happen multiple times and say, you know what? Now that I think about it, I'm not actually comfortable with that role. Either I think I'll be too emotional, or I don't want that kind of pressure, or I just want to be with you. So make sure that you're actually, you know, having your advocates sit with that a little bit and make sure that they're comfortable. People in this country, well, everywhere, but you know, in America especially, are very resistant to having these conversations. And sometimes people who have been married for decades have beliefs that they don't even know that each other has because they just never talk about this. So I've seen that come out too. So make sure that you're talking about that. And then finally, it needs to be somebody who can make decisions in difficult moments. If there are different opinions to be sorted through, or it's a crisis situation and things are moving very quickly, there's disagreement among a medical team or a family, and sometimes the fiercest pressure can come from family, people who love you, again, and just have different ideas about what's right. It needs to be somebody who's strong enough to stand up and say, nope, we've talked, she's told me what her goals and her wishes are, and here's what we're gonna do. So make sure that that's a personality trait among all your advocates. So this is something to discuss with your family. What is your understanding of your current health? Make sure your loved ones understand your health and how you see it. If you have any outstanding questions for your doctor that come up during this conversation, it's a great time to write them down and make sure that you bring those to your next appointment with you. If you're dealing with a serious medical condition, what are you hoping for with your current plan of care? What are your current goals? For example, if you have a diagnosis of heart failure, what are you hoping will happen? You know, what are you hoping for the outcome in your current treatment plan? If those hopes don't come true, what else do you hope for? And this can be a hard question. So be ready to pause and give this one some thought. This is the information that your family really needs to know, because chances are if you've arrived here, they may be speaking for you. So they need to know what would be most important to you if your current goals don't happen. For example, would it be most important for you then to be pain-free, or to be with your family, or to set other goals? Your loved ones need to hear this so they can make decisions that work towards those goals if you can't speak for yourself. Another topic for discussion is values and living well. So what's important to you in your life, and how do you want to live it? Some of the common answers that we hear here are independence, and that word can mean different things to different people. So explore those different, you know, what do you mean when you say independence? For example, some people that means being able to wake up and do whatever activities they want to do on their own schedule. For other people, that means being self-sufficient, being able to shower, get dressed, make your own meals, be able to take care of yourself. So explore the meaning of what that is throughout your discussion as those words come up. Spending time with family is another one that we hear. Participating in meaningful activities and hobbies and interests. These are different for different people as well, so explore that. For some people, you know, maybe road trips are important. For others, it's something as simple as being able to curl up in a corner with a book, or play cards with friends, or go for coffee. Now, this seems like a really general question, but it's actually one of the most important questions you can answer for your family. The reason for that is that knowing how you want to live and how you don't want to live gives your family a measuring tool, something that they can bounce treatment decisions off of. It would take you absolutely forever to lay out what you might want or not want in every medical situation that you might end up in. However, knowing how you want to live allows your family to say, if we pursue this treatment, are we getting closer to how she wants to live or further away from how she wants to live? So an example of how this might work might be, you know, maybe a grandma who just lives for her family. Her number one priority in life is to be part of their meaningful moments. Currently, she's making treatment decisions that lean towards the aggressive because she has a high quality of life most of the time. Now, if that same grandmother were to develop Alzheimer's dementia a few years down the road and her quality of life changes, now those decisions might start to look a little different. She's given her family the gift of telling them that her main source of joy is being able to engage in meaningful moments with her family. She's no longer able to do that very often because she doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who her family is. She's unaware of what's happening around her some of the time. So now those aggressive treatments might start to look different. Maybe they're not quite as worth the risk that they were before. But her family now has a quality of life standard to measure those treatment decisions against, rather than you know, just an overload of clinical information to sort through and figure out pros and cons. So this gives your family a guidepost, basically, for how you want to live. Next, so do you have any personal, cultural, or spiritual beliefs? What are they? Would any of them affect the healthcare choices that you would make? For example, some religions have some specific rules about blood transfusions or specific, rules about who can even be in the room, things like that. Is there anything like that that your medical team would need to know, or that your family would need to be reminded of? What kind of support would you want if you were unable to speak for yourself? Is there somebody that you would want called? Are there any specific prayers or music or readings that are meaningful to you that you would want to hear at a time like that? If you're not a religious person, many people aren't. What brings you comfort then? Is it fresh air? Like, would cracking a window open in the room be really comforting to you? The sound of the beach is a big one in this area. Having your pets around you. Anything that's important to you, your family will be glad to know, because then they can provide it. And it gives them something that they can do at a time when they're feeling pretty helpless, if they know these small things that are comforting to you. And what kind of environment do you want to be in? Very often, the things that people want for comfort are not big things. They're very easy, small things. Like, all the time I hear people say, I want my Discovery Channel shows on in the background. Everybody's got something that just brings them comfort. So talk through those things with your family. So next is a hypothetical question. This is something that everybody needs to think about. And again, this brings us back to the need for everyone 16 and up. It's 18 and up legally. I wish it was 16. So make sure that you read this question over a few times and that you understand the situation completely before you even answer it. A sudden event, an accident or an illness, leaves you unable to communicate. You are receiving the care needed to keep you alive. Doctors think there's very little chance, for example, less than 5% chance, that you'll recover the ability to know who you are or who you're with. In that situation, would you want to stay on life support indefinitely, try it for a period of time, and if there's no change or it's causing pain and suffering, have it removed, or withdraw life support and allow natural death? So if you choose number 2, to try life support for a period of time, it is so important to tell your family what that means to you. Again, that's one of those phrases that means completely different things to different people. For some people, it's 24 hours. For others, it's 6 months. So your advocates are going to be making that decision based on the best information they have. So it doesn't mean that if you tell your family, I don't want to be on this for longer than a week, they're going to turn the machines off at 1 week and 1 minute. They're still going to be responsible for making that choice based on the best information that they have. However, letting them know what period of time means to you keeps them from having to wonder if they waited long enough or if they did the right thing. So telling them your thoughts on this gives them peace of mind in that difficult decision. That is a huge, huge gift to them. So please take some time to discuss that if that is an option that you want. Next, we're going to talk about CPR. So what is your understanding of CPR? Think about that. And what do you know about the success rates of CPR? Oops, sorry. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to CPR and whether or not you should have it. That's a very personal decision. You should make that decision based on what's important to you. That said, there is so much misinformation about CPR. We have a million shows about Grey's Anatomy, ER, there's a million medical shows. It always looks like it works. So we want to make sure that people have actual realistic information to base this decision on. So again, there's no wrong answers, but we want the information out there. Oh, we've got a poll, Amy.
We do have a poll. Hold on, let me get to the right one. All right, here we go. So what percentage of the time do you think CPR is successful? 18 to 20, 48 to 50, 73 to 75, or 100%, and you get to meet George Clooney.
Bonus.
This is my favorite. This is my favorite poll question. So remember, just hit your selection and hit submit. Click and submit.
Okay, I'm doing my first.
All right, and it looks like we've got 5 out of 6 voted. I'll give it just another second to see if anybody else wants to get that last vote in. All righty, I am going to end this poll. So looks like everybody thinks pretty much they're in agreement that 18 to 20%. Then we go to 48 to 50. So, all right.
Okay. All right. So you guys have actually a better idea of CPR than a lot of people do. So yes, you're right. The actual success rate of CPR for everyone is about 18 to 20%. So for people without serious illness, you know, and so we're talking about infants to elderly people, generally the success rate is 18 to 20%. This chart here is referring to adults with serious illness. So, and those success rates are based on a lot of things like, where were you when you needed CPR? You know, were you at home and it took them 15 minutes to get to you? Or were you in the hospital next to a crash cart with people who know how to use it? And George Clooney, right? It depends on your age. It depends on your health. It depends on, you know, are you older and more frail? Do you have some multiple chronic illnesses already? Or are you young and pretty strong? So there's a lot of factors. This chart here refers to people with serious illness. So for people who receive CPR in the hospital and live, at most about 15 out of 100 leave the hospital and live an average of 4 months. People who are living in the community, again, with serious illness, 5 out of 100 leave the hospital and live up to a year. And people who are living in a facility, so a residential setting like a nursing home, adult foster care, things like that, 2 out of 100 leave the hospital and live up to 1 year. Those can be surprising numbers for some people. It sounds like a lot of you kind of already knew that. So again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just important to have all that information before you decide. So next we're going to talk about the basics of CPR and what it looks like to attempt it or not attempt it. Please remember that this is a valuable conversation to have with your doctor. Your doctor knows you, knows your health specifically, and can help you understand what this might look like for you. So make sure to add this to the list of questions that you're keeping for your doctor. So what kind of care would you want if your heart or breathing were to stop? And this decision aid is going to help us to go through that. Here works like this, down in columns. So to attempt CPR, this is what it is. Here's what it looks like if you attempt it. Here's what it looks like if you do not attempt it. So many people often, by the time they get to this point in the conversation, have some idea of whether they would or would not want CPR. So if you're a person who has said, you know what, I would start here on the bottom with these values. I want the chance to live. I'm willing to accept the fact that CPR might not restart my heart or breathing, and I'm willing to accept the burdens of CPR. If that sounds like you, just make sure you go through this top portion here. So what is it? CPR. It's done for you by somebody else, and it can include pressing on your chest, a tube to help you breathe, so being on a ventilator, electrical shock, and drugs. It's an attempt to restart your heart or breathing. The benefits are that it might do that. The short-term burdens of it are that you might need to be on a breathing machine for a time. And many people don't realize that. They will say, I want CPR, but I don't want to be on a ventilator. That's not an option. If you choose that you want CPR, they are going to take you, they have to, all the way to the finish line as far as they can get you. So if you just know going in that if you want CPR, you most likely will end up on a vent for a period of time in the hospital. You might need to be in ICU, like I said, or you might have some damaged or broken ribs, and that can, so they're trying to physically move your heart when they're pushing on your chest like that. They have to push very hard. And so as you become elderly and more frail, that can be a little bit higher risk. Some of the long-term risks of CPR are mild to severe brain damage. You know, again, if they don't get to you for a period of time and you haven't had oxygen going to your brain, that is a risk that you are taking. And, you know, as a result of that, you may no longer be able to live alone. If they don't attempt CPR, so they would not be doing it, you would receive other care to treat your symptoms and keep you comfortable. So I know that sounds kind of funny because at the point that you're receiving CPR, that means that your heart or breathing may have stopped. I think or have already stopped. What they're trying to get at here, I think, is this misconception that if you choose to be a do not resuscitate or that you don't want to receive CPR, that means that no one will do anything for you anymore. And that is not true. And when I say that, I mean, people think, I've heard people say, well, you know, I don't necessarily want CPR, but I'm afraid to fill out that form because then if I break my leg, no one will fix it, you know? So that doesn't mean that you're not going to receive any care. It just means they're not going to try to restart your heart or breathing if it stops. So the benefits of that are it's, you know, avoiding machines, it's avoiding these burdens of CPR that we talked about. The short-term burdens, of course, you will die a natural death. If you're unwilling to, you know, accept the fact that CPR might not restart your heart or breathing, unwilling to accept those risks of, you know, some damage to your ribs, difficult recovery. So that might be the place that you land. Does anybody have any questions about this part of it? No?
You can just unmute yourself and ask. We're a small group.
Yes, please feel free to jump right in anytime you've got a question. Okay, so this is a similar discussion for help with breathing. So again, this chart is referring to, oops, sorry, hold on. Yeah, so just like with CPR, there's no wrong answers, but it's good to have accurate information before you're making that decision. So this chart is talking about your heart or breathing has not stopped, but you need some help breathing. So this is a big one that is being discussed all over the news right now because of COVID. So maybe you have a condition like COVID or pneumonia. This is where we're going to talk about your options. So it's another question to ask your doctor. And you can change your mind at any time on any of this. So you can always change your mind about who's going to advocate for you, whether or not you want CPR, any of it, you can change at any point. So choose what you're comfortable with when we're talking about this as though something were going to happen tomorrow, because you can and should change your plan as you age over time. So here's the options again. So if you're a person who's like, you know what, I want to try every chance that I have. You want the chance to extend the length of your life. You're willing to have some discomfort and be in the ICU, and you're willing to take the chance that you might need long-term ventilator care, then aggressive care, being on a ventilator is probably the option for you. So what it is a tube that goes into your mouth or your nose, down your throat and into your windpipe. That tube is connected to a machine called a ventilator, and that pushes oxygen into your lungs to help you breathe. The benefits of that are that it might allow you to recover from a breathing problem like pneumonia or COVID, might allow you to live longer. The short-term burdens of that are that you can't speak or swallow, and you would need to be on medicine to help you stay calm, and that you would need to be in the ICU. The long-term burdens of that, so the risks are that you might not be able to get off the ventilator and would need long-term ventilator care. And that is almost always in an off-site facility, just so you know. That is not something that is commonly done at home. Your health might get worse and some other problems might occur. If you're a person who is saying, you know what, I'd like a little help, but I do not want to be on a ventilator. I don't want to be, you know, I'm okay with being in the hospital, but I don't want to be in ICU. You want the chance to extend the length of your life. You're okay with having some discomfort, but you don't want super aggressive care. This middle option might be for you, and that is called on the form, I'll show you, limited interventions. So that would be help with breathing that's not a ventilator, but maybe they try a BiPAP on you. So that's a tight fitting mask that covers your nose and your mouth. And that mask is connected to a machine that also pushes oxygen into your lungs. The benefits are that it might help you recover from a breathing problem, might help you live a little longer. The shorter term burdens of that, it can cause some skin irritation, can make it hard to talk or eat. You might also need medicine on that one to stay calm, and you would likely need to be in the hospital. The long-term risks of that are that it might not work and your breathing problem might continue to get worse. And then this last one, if you're a person who just says, I do not want to be on machines, I want to stay where I'm at. If I get sick, I want to stay comfortable at home unless my symptoms can't be managed at home. So comfort-focused treatment then might be for you, which would be efforts to keep you comfortable, medicine and oxygen for controlling your symptoms, physical and emotional support. It would provide control. It would provide some help for shortness of breath and some of the anxiety and fear that comes with that. The benefits are that it avoids machines, helps you stay where you want to be. The burdens are the medicine might make you drowsy, it might make your mouth and your nose dry, and the long-term burden, it's not going to extend your life. It's just going to keep you out of the hospital and keep you comfortable. And again, there's no right or wrong answers to any of this. None of this is, to try to sway you. You should choose the option that feels right for you. We just want you to be thinking through the whole process right now. So, and while we're at it, so let's talk about COVID, because that is, on top of everybody's mind right now. So new information comes out about this every day. There's not a solid number for survival on a ventilator, but some of the things that we do know, we know that advanced age and frailty and other health factors can decrease your chances of surviving on a ventilator. So for example, if you have a chronic illness like heart failure, COPD, kidney failure, diabetes, those illnesses are going to lower your chances of survival. And being on a ventilator requires hospitalization. So right now, families can't be in the hospital with their loved ones for their own safety. And so during this time with COVID, we need to be thinking through not just do we want a specific treatment preference, but what is the outcome and the end result of that look like? So for example, if you're a person with multiple chronic illnesses, what does the use of a ventilator look like for you? And that's a question for your doctor. What do they think your chances are of surviving on a ventilator? Do you want to be on that ventilator enough, if that's your choice, to be willing to be in the hospital, pretty sick, possibly dying, without your family around you? And those are hard terms. That's hard to think about. It really is, but it's the reality of this illness. So we just want to make sure that people are thinking through that whole process. Not just do I want the treatment, but what does that look like really if it's implemented? So like I said, you've given a lot of treatment of thought and discussion probably over time, especially with this being all over the news, about your decisions based on the choices that you make. There are kind of three general roads that I think of them as roads that you can choose from. So talking about this is going to help your family and your medical providers know, if you were suddenly to become ill, how far do you want to go with treatments? And this is, what we were just talking about with help with breathing. So again, there's no wrong answers, but understanding which road feels right for you will help you get the care that you want and prevent getting care that you don't want. Because if your family and your medical providers don't know, then they're going to put you basically on a conveyor belt of automated treatment. They're just going to assume that you want everything. And that's fine if you don't have any strong feelings. But, for example, people who really don't want to be on machines, but also don't have these conversations, they're not going to end up with what they want if they suddenly can't speak for themselves and nobody knows what that is. So these go from most aggressive to least aggressive, left to right. So if you're a person that said yes to aggressive treatments thus far, advanced interventions might be for you. Again, that is going to the hospital and being in intensive care, being on a vent, you're fine with all of that, then advanced interventions is probably where you are. Limited interventions, I'd be okay going to the hospital, try to keep me out of intensive care though. I don't want to be on a vent. That would be limited. And then comfort, you know, keep me where I'm at unless my pain and symptoms can't be managed. So talking through that is going to help your family understand, you know, what to do for you if something happens. And again, you can change these at any time. So this is a lot, I know, a lot to think about. If you are ready to complete your document, I know that Amy sent this out ahead of time. Here's also a place you can email or call if you have any questions, or if you want to download a copy of any of these documents. There's an e-fillable version. That's the one that Amy sent out, where you can just type right into your computer, except for the signatures and things. So that's available to you. And I'm going to walk through the document here and show you where the answers go to the things that we just discussed. Please feel free to jump in if you have any questions. And then remember to be talking about this with your advocates as well.
Before we start, would you just share the PowerPoint? Will we have access to that, or is, you know, the documents that you were just going through?
Mm-hmm. Well, Amy's recording this. Amy, jump in if you'd like. So that'll be available.
Okay, all right.
All of our recordings go on our YouTube page. So you just go to YouTube and type in Area Agency on Aging, and you'll get right to our page. It takes me a day or two to get them edited though, so don't be really fast with it.
Okay, no, I won't.
But you'll be able to watch it and repeat it over and over, so you'll have access to all of that
Great.
Information.
Thank you.
Yep.
And you're always welcome to call as well,
Okay.
Denise. Okay, so these are the first 2 pages. If you have a printed packet that you've picked up from your doctor's office or anything, these pages are pink. So we've been through a lot of this already, but it's here for you if you want to review it. So it's just basically an overview. This page is where you're going to name your advocates. If you're completing this document for somebody else, for example, if they have a hard time seeing or writing, there's a box in the middle here that'll tell us who completed it and why. So if you're filling this out for your mom or something, just make sure that you fill out this box as well. There's room for 3 advocates here. You're going to name them in order that you want them to speak for you. If you don't have 3, you can just go ahead and leave it blank. But remember, it's important to have a backup if you can. If you don't have anyone who can advocate for you, then go ahead and leave it blank. But remember, it's even more important to finish the document and make sure that it's distributed widely so that everybody knows what your wishes are if there's nobody to speak for you. Now, you are going to be naming them in order, and I've heard many people say, well, I want my kids to make the decision. It doesn't mean that they can't work together. Of course they can, but only one person speaks at a time. So what this does mean is if these people don't agree, primary and first and second, they're going to take whatever this primary person says. So again, that's why it's super important to make sure everybody's on the same page and that they've heard you say it, even if they don't agree with your choices.
Question.
Yeah, go for it.
So if I know one is my primary, but second, can it be a husband and wife, or does it just have to be one of, one of the 2?
No, absolutely it can be. It can be whoever you want, whoever you trust. Yep.
So like if first my brother and the second is a couple, and I could name a third person as single, but the second person, they could be a husband and wife team.
Oh,
right?
no, thank you. Now I understand what you're saying. Yep. So I would name the husband and then the wife. You can have as many advocates as you want. If you want to have 20 advocates, go for it. It's just that they're going to go in order.
Okay.
So what I do then is just make an extra copy of this page and the signature page and just keep listing them.
Okay.
Yep. Good question. Good question. And make sure too that, if your spouse or something is who your primary advocate's going to be, write them down. I've seen a couple people misunderstand that and think, well, of course they'll go to my husband first. And then the primary advocate is maybe my daughter. No, make sure you put whoever your number 1 is in that number 1 spot.
Okay.
This next page is just for your advocates to read so they know what they're signing up for. This is the acceptance page that we talked about that's required in Michigan. So your advocates will sign in the order that you named them. Your number one advocate is going to sign in this top box. The first alternate will sign in the next box. If you have more than 3 advocates, again, Denise, just print out another page and have them sign in the order that you named them on that front page. Yeah, okay, so, oh, sorry, I already went over that a little bit. I lost myself. So advocate signatures here do not have to be witnessed. The dates don't have to match. We know that people are spread out all across the country. There's several different ways that you can handle that. You can, you know, print out different copies of this and mail them to 3 different states and have them send them back and then just put them all back together in your packet. So you can do it that way. You can email them this document and have them sign it and send it back. Copies work just as well as the originals. So it's not at all a big deal if you end up putting a bunch of copies together with your packet. This is the Advance Directive signature page. Make sure that you slow down and get this one right. This is where, this is what makes the document legally binding, but it's also where the most mistakes happen. So this page has to be signed by 2 witnesses. Witnesses cannot be family and they can't be healthcare workers who are providing you direct care. It can be anybody else. It can be friends, neighbors, people at the bank, people at the store, people at church. They don't need to know anything about your document at all. It's not their business. All they're doing is watching you sign it. That's their only responsibility, is saying, yep, I know, I see that this is Denise. Nobody's making her sign it. That's all they're saying. So with social distancing, witnessing can be really hard right now. So we will take these documents without signatures right now during COVID if we have to for guidance, but it's not a legal document unless this is signed. People are getting really funny and creative about this. They're passing it through their neighbors' windows and having them sign it and passing it back out. People have been really creative. So just slow down when you get to this page and make sure that you get this right. These dates have to match. So if I were to sign this today, you know, it would have today's date, and in theory, you would be standing at a safe 6-foot distance from me and also signing on the same day because you're watching me sign. So this page is where you're going to answer the what if question that we talked about. So what if I were to end up on life support? Doctors think there's very little chance that I'm going to recover the ability to know who I am, who I'm with. So anything that looks like this on this document, you're going to initial the option that you want and then just cross off the one that you don't want. I would just put a big X through it just to make sure that it's absolutely clear what you want. Again, if you're choosing this second option, make sure that you are even if you don't write it down on here, that you're talking with your family about what period of time means to you. That is the most important gift that you can give them, is that peace of mind. You can write it in if you like. This is your document. Anything that is important to you, I would write down on this document. This page is where you're going to put your answers to the CPR question and also the roads that we talked about. How far down the treatment road would you want to go if you were to become ill? So, and again, you're going to initial the choice that you want and cross off the one that you don't want. So I want CPR in all cases. I want CPR unless my healthcare providers determine that I have any of the following: an injury or illness that can't be cured and I'm dying, no reasonable chance of surviving if my heart or breathing stops, or little chance of surviving long term if my heart or breathing stops and it'll be hard and painful for me to recover from CPR. So this last option here is, it requires, you know, I do not want CPR, requires an additional form that's available for download on the link that's in this presentation, or I can email it to you. I can send Amy a copy as well, so she's got it. So first responders must be provided a copy of that do not resuscitate form if you don't want CPR, or you have to have a medical bracelet in the state of Michigan that meets state requirements in order to withhold CPR. It has to be witnessed and it has to be signed by your doctor. So otherwise, it's absolutely essential that you get that form if that's important to you, and have copies of it available, because otherwise they have to give you CPR. So that's something to know about this middle option. This option's perfectly fine. We'll use it for guidance to make decisions, but know that if your heart or breathing stops at home and you've chosen that middle option, you're likely going to receive CPR, because again, they have to give it to you unless you have that do not resuscitate form. So it's really just being used as guidance for your advocates, so that they know if they're speaking for you, if I've got, got an injury or illness that can't be cured and I'm dying, tell them I don't want CPR. So it's really just guidance.
Julie, question. I
Yeah.
know my father, who died a little bit of a year ago, but he had a DNR, and they was saying posted on the refrigerator because of EMTs come in the house. If we're not there, they're gonna start CPR, and that's the first place they look. Is that true?
That's absolutely true. Yep. So they want these documents, emergency services, but they don't have time to look for them. So we have some red folders that I would also be happy to provide you if you just email me. They say EMS on the front in huge letters, and those are made to go on the fridge. They'll look for it there. It also comes with a little sticker that's removable. So if you don't want the whole big folder on your fridge, you put that sticker on your fridge instead. It says, we have advance directives, they are, and then you just write down where you keep them. And that way, the people from EMS can just walk to the cupboard behind them or whatever and grab it. I keep mine in the freezer because it's right there in front of them, but it's out of my way,
Okay.
So that's a good place to keep it too. So yes, good question. This is the page where you're going to record the results of your discussion about your personal, cultural, and spiritual beliefs. So remember, if you're not a religious person, there are probably still some things that feed your heart, things that are comforting. And those are things that your family's going to want to know, again, at a time when they're feeling kind of helpless. So anything that's comforting to you, please put on this page. Music, prayer, fresh air, certain TV shows, things you'd like read aloud. Who do you want in the room? There's lots of places, room for you to put that on this page. And this is important stuff for them to know. About a third of the way down here, you're going to see options for, if I'm dying, I would like to be at home, in a hospital, or not sure. So of course, this is going to depend on the situation and what's possible, but this is a place for you to put your preferences. So not knowing the future, all things being equal, what do you think, where do you think you would want to be if you were dying, is what this is for. So, and since we've addressed throughout this presentation some common misunderstandings about treatment options, I would like to talk a little bit about another area of misinformation about being at home, and that's hospice care. So many people think that hospice care means that you're giving up, that it's only for the last few days of life, and that is just not true. So hospice care is actually meant for the last 6 months of life, or sometimes even longer. Sometimes people even improve once they get on hospice care, because they're not running themselves ragged any longer, back and forth to the ER every time something happens, or going out to see 5 different specialists. Hospice provides a team of medical professionals wherever you call home. You can have that in the hospital or in a facility. It provides a tremendous amount of support to you and your family. It provides a doctor, nurses who will do home visits. It gives your family somebody that they can call 24/7 if something happens in the middle of the night. They're not having to run back and forth to the emergency room at 2 o'clock in the morning anymore. They've got somebody they can call who can talk them through whatever's happening, or who can come out and help. It provides hospice aides who can help with personal care and bathing, and that is something that we hear from a lot of caregivers. That's the kind of thing that can become overwhelming, especially, you know, for example, with couples that are both elderly and trying to take care of each other. So that is a huge relief for families. Provides a social worker who can help connect with local supportive services that you might not be aware of. It provides grief support for your family for 13 months or as long as you need it. Spiritual care is available if that's something that your family wants. Medical equipment and medications that are related to the terminal diagnosis. So this team's only goal is to surround you and your family, to help you stay comfortable, and to meet whatever goals that you have in the time that you have left, and ensure that you're living as high a quality of life as you possibly can in that time that you have left. So what we hear from a lot of families who receive hospice care is, I wish I had known about this sooner. So please know that that's something that's available to you. It's a Medicare benefit, and you don't have to wait for a referral. You or your family can call yourself and find out if you're eligible for that. That's something that you qualify for. So if you get to a point where you need help with pain and symptom management, know that that's an option that is a great way to stay at home and comfortable with your family. So I just wanted to cover that because there's so much misinformation. A lot of families don't get that support until just the very last few days, which is unfortunate because they could have had it for months and months. So the rest of this page is for what you'd want your healthcare providers to know about you, who you would want called, if anyone, for support, what kind of environment you would want to be in. You know, for example, do you want to be in a quiet room, or do you want your family around you telling funny stories, certain music or shows on in the background? Anything and everything that you want or don't want should be on this page. If you have any thoughts about whether you'd want to be an organ or tissue donor, this is the page to record those on. If you're an organ donor on your driver's license, then you're going to automatically initial these top 3 lines because you're automatically added to the state's online donor registry when it's on your license. So go ahead and initial those top 3 lines if that's your choice. If you don't want to donate organs or tissue, or you only want to donate specific things, you can mark those options as well. One of the main things to know about this page is that if you do want to donate your body to a specific organization, for example, University of Michigan or Michigan State, those arrangements have to be made ahead of time with that organization. So they will interview you, they'll talk about your wishes, and they'll provide you with the paperwork that you need and a card for when that time comes so that everybody will know that you pre-arranged that, and they'll know who to call and what those arrangements are. And you don't, you know, if you don't know, you can, or don't want to fill this page out, you can always just initial this bottom line. I choose not to complete this. And again, this part of the document is guidance for your loved ones, so you can always add to this as well. So this page is your preferences for autopsy, anatomical gifts, and burial or cremation. The things to know here are that if your family requests an autopsy that would not normally have been done, the cost comes back to them, and they would be informed at that time of what that cost is. It's just something to know. So the options for autopsy are, I would accept one if it would help my blood relatives understand the cause of my death or help them with their future medical decisions. I would accept one if it would help the advancement of medicine, or I don't want one. So those are your choices. If you don't have funeral arrangements, you can always write them in here later. And then this health information exchange down here, this is a network of hospitals throughout Michigan that share these documents. It's free and it's optional, but we would need your signature for permission to be able to share it. So that way, if something happens to you when you're out of town, if you're traveling in Detroit or something and something happens and that hospital is on this network, they would be able to see your document in case of emergency. So it's just a little extra coverage. So you have come a long, long, long way. This is a lot of information. And hopefully you'll have, you know, completed or soon to be completed document This last page here doesn't really require you to fill anything out. You can write your doctor's information down here if you'd like to. But it's important to keep this page for future reference. So just a reminder, please make sure that you talk with your family about your wishes, not just the people who will be making decisions for you, but anybody who would be bedside. The more people who are on the same page ahead of time, the better that experience is going to be for everyone. It's always going to be hard, but it'll at least be better. Make a lot of copies. If you need help with that, I'd be happy to help if you just call or email. The people who should have copies of your documents here are just some suggestions. So your advocates, anybody who's speaking for you, people who would be bedside, your doctor, it should be scanned into your medical record at your local hospital, your lawyer, if they would be very involved, your pastor, if they would be very involved in supporting you and your family. Keep a copy on your fridge for first responders. That's where they're going to look if they have to come into your home. Glove compartment's a great place to keep one in case you're in an accident. So keep a list of the people and places that you keep these copies so that if you do change your document, you can redistribute it later and make sure that they have the newest version. And then remember that this is not a document that you're stuck with forever. You can and should change it. These 5 Ds down here are just some really good times to review and change it. Some good lifetime events. I mean, obviously you don't have to change it if it still matches your wishes, but so every decade, a lot happens in 10 years. You can change a lot as a person in 10 years. That's just a really good time to review it and make sure that it still matches what you want. Every time there's a death, when you experience the death of a loved one, you've just watched somebody go through something really hard. It might have changed what you want or don't want for yourself. So that's a good time to look at it. Divorce, whenever you're going through all that paperwork and all that changing of names and who's responsible for what. Anytime there's a new diagnosis of a serious health condition, and anytime there's a significant decline, those are all really good times to look this document over and make sure that it still matches your wishes. So this page is only necessary if you decided that you don't want to receive CPR. This is that extra form that we talked about. If this is your choice, emergency services has to be holding this form in their hands in order to withhold CPR. So if you do want to be a do not resuscitate, make sure that you're keeping this in your pink folder on your fridge as well. In fact, this is crucial. You know, even more, I would make sure this is at the very front of your stack of papers that's on the fridge if you want to have one of these. So it can be a copy of the form, that's fine. Copies work just as well as the original. You can also have a bracelet instead of the form, but there's some information here on the right-hand side of what needs to be on that bracelet. It needs to have certain specific information in the state of Michigan. So if you're completing this form for yourself, you're going to fill out the left-hand side here and ignore this right-hand side because you don't have a guardian yet. If you're completing it for someone else, you're their power of attorney and you've been activated, or you're a guardian for somebody, then and you're their legal advocate, then you can do this right-hand side here. If not, just leave it blank. This form also has to be signed by 2 witnesses. So if you want to be a DNR and you're already doing your advance directive, just have the same people witness it. That'll save you having to find 2 more people. And then your doctor also has to sign. So these dates, just like on the advance directive, have to match your signature. Your doctor's signature doesn't have to match because you're just having them sign it whenever you can pin them down, basically.
That should be in our packet.
Yeah, that's not part of the download that you sent.
Yeah.
That is usually separate, so I will send that to Amy and have her send it out. Is that okay, Amy? Okay. All right, so we'll make sure that you guys get a copy of that to fill out. And again, copies of this work just as well as the original. So after you get these completed, make sure that you, again, make several copies and distribute them liberally so they're not difficult to locate if they're needed. People that need to have copies, again, your doctor, your lawyer, your advocates, your local hospital. If you are within the Spectrum Health Lakeland system, getting this scanned into your chart at one place will make it available to everyone. So if you have it scanned at the hospital, your doctor will be able to see it. And then if the person that you care for is homebound, keep a copy in a drawer also by the bedside. A person from EMS told me this recently, that a lot of falls happen in the bedroom at night, people getting up to go to the restroom. So keeping a copy in the nightstand drawer is also just a good extra place. We just tell people, drop them from a chopper if you're in doubt, because the best chance you have of getting what you want is to make sure that more people know what that is. And we've been through these 5 Ds. So thank you again for taking the time to do this. This is a huge, huge gift that you're giving to your family. The people that are in your life, as you complete your documents and get them in place, please take the opportunity to share this with the people around you, your friends and neighbors, and encourage them to do this. Remember, everybody 18 and up needs to have this in place. And remind them, a lot of people are resistant to talking about this. You guys are brave and came to this session today. But this really is a gift that people are giving their families. And sometimes when it's presented to people that way, that tends to turn things around. If you've got somebody in your life that is resistant to talking about this, sharing, listen, this is going to give me peace of mind, knowing what you want. So please, can we talk about this? People tend to think of it as something that they're doing to their families, rather than for their families. Like, I don't want to make them uncomfortable. I don't want to have this hard conversation, but this is something that's going to save them pain down the road. In particular, if you know of anyone who is beginning to struggle with memory loss, and they have not done this yet, please encourage them to start this process immediately. If people get to a point where they lose the ability to make decisions for themselves and they haven't done this yet, that can lead to a lot of unnecessary pain and red tape for their families. Naming an advocate while they can still speak for themselves will prevent their family having to go through a guardianship process with the courts, which is time and money and stress that they don't need. And it helps people to make a plan together while that person can still share what's important to them. So if you know of anybody who's starting to struggle with this, please, please, please encourage them to get this done. Oh, we've got another poll, Amy.
All right. I was just waiting. Okay. So here is this poll. So what actions will you take now regarding advanced care planning? You will talk with my loved ones about my wishes. I will complete my own advance directive. I will encourage others to complete their advance directives. Oh, look at that. I put that on there twice. So you only have to answer that once. Sorry, I doubled it. I'm not sure. I will think about it, and none. So any of those, you can pick an answer. By the way, these are all anonymous. I will not know who answered who and what. So feel free to be truly honest.
Only pick one, huh?
Yep. Well, yes, unfortunately I set it up so you can only pick one. There are different ways to set that poll up, but I set that up that way. So, all right, we're almost done. All right, give you another second or two. And here we go. So it looks like 2 and 2 are going to talk to their loved ones about their wishes and will complete their own advance directive. So good job, you guys.
Great. So thank you all for being part of this. If you have any outstanding questions, please feel free to call or email me. I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide a facilitator if you'd like some further conversation, or if it would be helpful to have a third party there to walk your family through this process. That's a community service that we offer. We have a number of trained facilitators throughout the community, including volunteer facilitators, if that's something that you would be interested in doing, if you feel passionately about this. And those people are trained specifically to walk families through this conversation. And it can sometimes be really helpful to have a third party there who can keep people on task and on focused, and also people on good behavior.
Julie, is there a charge for that facilitation?
No, there is
Awesome.
not. Nope. So please feel free to call if you'd like an appointment. And we're doing a lot of these over the phone right now as well. We're offering that because of COVID. So whatever your comfort level is, you're welcome to do that. So you can reach us here. And thanks again for taking the time to do this. Does anybody have any questions?
Nope.
Concerns, thoughts?
Nope, just a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about. Yep. Yep. So is there anything that has been preventing you up to this point of doing it, or? I'm just always curious to hear.
No, just always busy, and you just figure there's always time later.
That's so true. Yep.
And for me, I just went through this with my my mother in 2014, and my dad just died. Be coming up on a year, November 7th. So they had done wills. I was his power of attorney, and so we had some things that said. And even with this said, it's still kind of jarring when sometimes it comes down to those moments. We thought in the hospital there was one moment he had a DNR where he had an episode, and my brother and I in the room, we were just like stunned, like, oh my God, is this it? Are they going to help him? And it was something, it was, I forget what the code is. It was like everything up to, like you were saying, but it was, we were appreciative that we had things in order, because at that moment, it's not the time to try to make a decision because you're so emotional and so connected. But then I'm thinking about it with my parents, but I'm a single woman. And I was like, I died, put me on a barge, send me out to Lake Michigan. But the thing is, people still have to know what I would want. They still have to make decisions. I have family and friends who love me, and I wouldn't want anybody having to come and like, what does she want? I never thought about it in terms of myself, taking care of everyone else. So I'm encouraging my single brothers and sisters to do the same. It's not a comfortable conversation, but it's necessary. So
absolutely.
Especially now with this COVID, and you just don't know. So that's what brought me here today. I need to get on this.
Good.
And Denise, we are going to be offering these sessions monthly with Julie. So you can feel free to send them our way. We're going to try to do it once a month, just so until at least COVID is over, so that we can reach people in their homes.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be employees, it can be anyone.
Nope, it can be, we do this free. Our target market usually for any of these is anybody 50 and over, but we don't check IDs, so it doesn't matter.
Well, in that case, I'm only 45.
Exactly. And we have people from all over the world log in. So if your people are out of the country, we're okay with that. Just here to reach people.
Well, there's one loss of memory.
Well, and I'm really glad that you brought up, Denise, the family issue, because one thing that has worked well is if one person is doing it, to have the whole family do it. Because very often they're all speaking for each other. So you might as well just rip off the Band-Aid and have a larger conversation and get this all done together. And that has been great. And honestly, I've had hundreds of these conversations now. They are never as awkward as people think they're going to be. They're often filled with laughter. They're beautiful because people are learning new things about each other. People that have been married for decades learning new things about each other. They're awesome conversations.
They really are.
Yeah, and they're relieved at the end of them. In particular, people who are trying to take care of their parents, are just so relieved to know what to do and how to care for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish I'd had my brother in this session today with just the two of us. So I'll be talking with him. He may be in your next one.
Okay. All right.
You can tell him he doesn't have to say anything if he doesn't want to, right?
Right, because he's shy. Yeah.
Well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, everybody, on behalf of the Area Agency on Aging and the Campus for Creative Aging and Spectrum Health Lakeland, we thank you guys for joining us, and look for that next session will be posted on the Campus for Creative Aging website pretty soon as Julie and I get 30 seconds to talk about a next date for it. So keep an eye out for that. And you guys all signed up in Eventbrite. You'll see it in there too. It'll pop up for you. So, all right.
All right.